live. I'm hoping everyone can hear me in there. Oh, you really can't see that. That's really bad. Okay. I see you. 3 people are live in the chat right now. I don't know if any of you join the chat during class? No? All right, that's fine. You can if you want, whatever. Y'all look scared for a second. If you're in the chat, give me a little thumbs up emoji if you can find it. Oh, I'm loud on the computer on my phone. Stop it, phone. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Haha. I have my phone open to the live stream so that when I go over to the desk, I can actually see the chat. So that's the reason why I have that open. But yay, fun days. So you had due for me some questions from chapter 10, which I'm going to review a few of those with you right now. I should really double check what questions I had for you. They're on my classroom. You had to read chapter 11, which I am going to review the rest of the notes from chapter 11 today for you. I do have a little bit of a video and a little bit of a discussion to talk about in regards to samples and bias and things of that nature, all that fun stuff. As a heads up, I believe at this very moment, or close to it, your Google Classroom has a scheduled quizzes that was thrown on there. You got an email or you got a message saying to join a quizzes classroom. Yes, please join that quizzes classroom. It's basically your Google Classroom. It's just joining on the website quizzes. But there is a minor in regards to chapter 11 that I believe I put the due date. I put the due date for the 22nd. Wait, what did I put it for the 22nd? Oh, no, that's today's homework. My bad. It's due the 29th. There it is, because today's the 23rd. So I have it due the 29th. Now, here's the beautiful thing about the quizzes. You have 2 attempts. I'm going to give you 2 attempts at it. You take it the first time, you're like, crap, I got an 85. I could have done better. And then you try to do better. And if you don't, then, well, you got the 85. Or you take it the first time, you're like, crap, I got like a 60. I wish I had another shot at that. Good news. You have 2 shots at this, but just 2 shots. Please use them wisely. Don't take them one after the other. If you have 2 shots at this quizzes, don't just do them. Click, 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 and be done with them. Maybe review the information, get yourself ready, go on the quizzes on like Thursday or Friday or whatever it is. And then maybe wait till Sunday to take the second time. That's up to you how you want to kind of handle that. But that will be available to you. It should be live now, I believe. Yes, there it is. It is live now. Good, because it was supposed to go live at 7:30. So when I assign you problems out of the textbook, and I'm going to take a look at them later today, the ones that you guys did, the problems that I assign you, I am not going to be looking at these problems as I need them 100% correct. I'm not going to be looking at these problems as I'm going to give you a grade on this, because these problems are meant for you. These problems are meant for you to prepare for whatever assessments are on the way. These problems are meant for you to understand the information, to take a deeper dive into what it is that you're trying to learn. So please keep that in mind. It is very, very good practice. And being that you are AP students, you need to jump on that practice. But keep in mind, it's a very low-risk practice, because even if you get the problems wrong, I am going to take the time to go over what we need to go over in order to understand what we need to understand. Because everything that we learn, everything that we touch upon is going to come back full force later in this year. Oh, keep that in mind. So I had given you problems. I already lost it. Problems numbers 8, 12, 14, and 20. It wasn't a lot. No, sorry, 6, 8, 12, 14, and 20. There it is, which I brought up right here. Now, I do have a couple in mind that I would like to go over. I'm not going to be able to go over every single one of them. I have a couple that I would definitely like to go over, but I'm going to ask you guys first, specifically. Is there a problem in that list that you were like, please, 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 oh, help me, please, help me, please? Yes. Number 20. Let's run number 20. I believe it's on the next page. Click. And display settings. Can I zoom in on this? Nope. More. Is there a way to zoom in besides this thing? Oh, sweet. Look at that. That's pretty solid. Okay. Let's talk about number 20. A friend of yours who took the multiple choice quiz and exercise 19, doesn't matter what 19 was, got all 6 questions right, but now claims to have guessed blindly on every question. Ooh. If each question offered 4 possible answers, do you believe her? Now, I know this says something else. So I'm going to ignore that for the time being. Let me just stick with the do you believe her part. Think about this logically. There are 4 possible answers, which means there is a 25% chance of guessing on one particular problem and getting that one particular problem right. A 25% chance is less than a coin flip. So basically a 25% chance on question 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, getting them all right, blindly guessing, that's amazing. Now, later in this year, we are going to talk a bit more about probability and how to calculate the probability of such an event happening, but that is not what this question is asking. They're not asking for the probability of this event happening. They want you to explain basing your argument on a simulation involving at least 10 trials. Now, you could do one of several things here. Number 1, you could use a random number table if you had one handy, which I believe I did provide for you a PDF file on some previous post on the stream a long time ago. Yeah. Or you could utilize the rand_int function on your calculator. Now, when I say utilizing the rand_int function, yes, if you opened up your TI-84 on your Chromebooks, I couldn't think of the word Chromebook for some reason. If you open those up, it would immediately be reset, which is fine. You'd have to seed the calculator. Oh, I got to get rid of that. Let me just reset mine for the sake of argument. Because if you just did it from RAM cleared, where you went over to rand_int 1,4 and just blindly did this a bunch of times, you'd get the exact same numbers that I got. But I need to seed my calculator. Just as a reminder, I'm going to type in today's date, 9/23/2020. What do I have to press in order to seed my calculator? What do you remember from last week? Stow. Where's Stow? Yeah, it's right over. Stew, standing for store. And where do I have to store it? Rand. Yeah. Math. Now, again, this is if you wanted to get different numbers than the person next to you. If you needed to run a random simulation and you wanted to be guaranteed actual randomness, you just pick some number. I picked today's date, whatever. Otherwise, if you just do it from RAM cleared, you're going to get the exact same answers as somebody else. So I'm going to run back rand_int 1,4. Now, before I actually run this, I have to do a little bit of an assignment. I haven't assigned any of these numbers to anything. So I would write something like, okay, I'm going to use rand_int 1 to 4. Let 1 be a correct answer. Let 2 to 4 be wrong answers. And the way that I am going to do this, I have to, in order to run a trial, I'm going to run 6 questions. So actually, let's just do that. I would stop trial after 6 questions because I would have to identify some kind of a stopping point. I would also have to identify some kind of response variable. Now, in this case, the response variable is number of correct answers. Now, the question doesn't specify any of that stuff. The question in the book doesn't specify any of that stuff. Flip. Oh, no. Flip. There we go. Ow, that hurt a lot. Ooh, goodness, that's going to leave a bruise. It doesn't specify any of that information. You just kind of have to infer it based on what they give you. That's what a lot of this stuff is. Inference on very vague questions. Multiple choice quiz, got all 6 questions right, but claimed to have guessed blindly. 4 possible choices. That's the 1 to 4. Do you believe her? Set up the simulation. Okay. Number assignment based on random 1 to 4. Stopping point, response variable. All right. Let's run a trial. Let's see what happens. They say at least 10 trials. Okay. Let's see what happens. So I got to do 6 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that sucks. The response variable is what? 0 in this case. Yes, the response variable in this case is 0. Now, again, I'm going to have to come to a suitable conclusion in a little bit, but my response variable is 0. Now, that's my simulation. Your simulation may have gotten a different number. That's perfectly fine. These are random numbers. All right, let me clear that. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 is the response variable. You only got 1 correct. All right. Look at that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2. That's going to be a pattern, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 0. I feel like going back and forth. Here, do me a favor. Stand over here, because I don't feel like going back and forth anymore. All you got to do, you just hit the clear button, and then just hit enter 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. There, keep going. Just hit clear, and then do it again. All right, we got 2 there. Keep going. Oh, we got 1 there. Clear it. Oh, we got 2 there. Clear it. Oh! Oh, my goodness. No, that was ridiculous. That was nuts. Okay. All right, one more time. Okay, not bad. All right, thank you. Thank you. That was the 10 trials. That was 10 trials. Cool. That 5 really threw me for a loop. Man. But it could happen. Legitimately, it could happen where the person got all 6 correct. Now, in terms of these numbers right here, I want to trip over my cord and hurt myself again. Let's see. 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 2, 1 plus 2 plus 5 plus 4 divided by 10. Why did I even do that? I can do that in my head. Okay, cool. So now, I ran 10 trials. I averaged the numbers together. Yes, I'm just making sure I got my numbers correct. Let me flip the screen. Chapow. Explain basing your argument on a simulation involving at least 10 trials. Here's my conclusion. Based on my simulation of 10 trials, again, I'm using fluffy language. Fluffy language is the name of the game. Based on the simulation, I'm taking the responsibility off of myself. Based on the simulation of 10 trials, I got an average of 1.8 correct answers with blindly guessing parameters or something along those lines. I have strong evidence to believe. Now, keep in mind, again, I'm not taking a definitive stance. I'm saying I have strong evidence to believe that my friend is lying. Am I calling my friend a liar? No, I'm not calling my friend a liar. I'm saying that I have strong evidence to believe, or I can bit my tongue. Strong evidence to suggest that my friend is a liar. Never flat out call your friends a liar. Use that in conversation. It kind of throws them for a loop. Instead of being like, you're a liar, and then they get all offended. I have evidence to believe that you're a liar. They don't know what to do. And then you slap them. Anyway, this is what I got. In fact, you could do an additional thing where you could even add in, for one of the trials, we almost got all 6 correct, but it appears very unlikely, not impossible, it appears very unlikely that the friend got all 6 correct just by blindly guessing. Fluffy language. I just basically stated the same thing 3 different ways. Now, again, when we eventually get to the chapter on probability, we're going to be able to calculate the chances of such a thing happening. In fact, some of you probably already know how to calculate the chances of such an event happening. For the sake of argument, that right there is the chance of it happening. What I just put up there. The probability of such an event happening, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, is 0.000244 or 0.0244%. Very, very small chance. I can't believe you got 5 in a row. This blew my mind. In fact, hold on. Let me see what the chances are of 5 in a row. Hold on. If I want to do 5 in a row, that's still, I mean, it's better, but it's still pretty low. Instead of a 0.02% chance, you have a 0.09% chance. All right. Back to the homework. Hold on. See what questions they were again. So we went over 20, the 6, 8, 12, and 14. Any other requests before I go over one or so on my own? Because I am going to go over one or so. I haven't decided which one I want yet. But I want to make sure we at least hit one that you guys want to say. Take a look at the page. Let's go to page 275. Boom. Let's zoom in a bit. So I had to do 6, 8, and what else? 12 and 14? 12 and 14. Oh, sweet. We are totally going over number 12. Okay, how do I get there? How do I move the page over? Come on. I zoomed in on you, but now you don't want to. What are you doing? You silly book, internet. See how many windows I have open? This is my wife's cell phone. I'm implying that she has way too many windows open on her cell phone. Anyway, here, I have number 12 open right here. More bad simulations. Explain why each of the following simulation fails to model the real life situation. Okay. Using the random numbers 2 through 12 to represent the sum of faces when 2 dice are rolled. When you roll 2 dice, the smallest sum that you can get is a 2. It's called snake eyes. The largest sum that you can get is a 12. That's a double 6. If you've ever played any game with dice, you're pretty familiar with that. Why can't I use random numbers 2 to 12 to represent the outcomes of 2 dice? Why? How many different ways can you roll a 2? Just one way, a double 1. How many different ways can you roll a 7? There you go. There are 6 ways. I know you said 3, but technically because they're 2 separate dice, they're 2 separate events. And you could roll a 3 and a 4, or you could roll a 4 and then a 3. Because they're 2 separate dice, you have to count them as 2 separate events. But you're absolutely correct. Different sums have different chances of happening, and you are more likely, way more likely, to get a sum of like 6, 7, or 8 rather than a sum of 2 or 12. If you just used random numbers 2 to 12, each number in that scenario has an equal chance of happening, which is not reflective of this dice situation. You ever play craps? Do you guys know how to gamble? Gosh. You know why statistics was first studied as a subject? To cheat at gambling. That is a true story of the history of math that they never teach you. All right, part B. Use a random integer from 0 to 5 to represent the number of boys in a family with 5 children. Use the random integer 0 to 5, 0 through 5, to represent the number of boys in a family of 5 children. What's wrong with that? Question. Oh, go ahead. Yes, but you could have 0 boys. Could have 0 boys. Here's the thing. If there's a family of 5 children, on average, how many boys would you expect to be? On average. Keep in mind, it would be a decimal. Yeah? 2.5, right? You would say on average. Family of 5 kids, family of 5 kids, family of 5 kids, family of 5 kids. If you average the number of boys, it would average out to be 2.5. Getting roughly 2 or 3 boys is way more likely to happen than getting no boys or 5 boys. It's similar to the dice situation. Very similar to the dice situation. The number of boys, 0 boys compared to 2 boys, not the same chance of it happening. And again, we'll get into way more details of that when it comes to probability. My family almost fell into that. I have 3 older sisters. Yes. Feel bad for me. Okay, nobody feels bad for me. Whatever. Part C. Simulate a baseball player's performance at bat by letting an out, or 0 be an out, 1 be a single, 2 be a double, 3 be a triple, 4 be a home run. Yeah. Which one's not equal? What would you say is the least likely to happen? Home run or triple. Yeah. In fact, like it's way more likely that people hit a home run versus a triple. It's difficult to hit a triple. Very difficult. But you're absolutely right. They're not equal. The chance that you would hit a triple or a home run is much lower than that of getting an out or a single. They are not equal chances. I love this stuff. All right. Last one I'm going to talk about, unless you guys have any other questions, I want to talk about number 14 real quick. I had you do 14, right? Cool. 14. After simulating the spread of a disease, a researcher wrote 24% of people contracted the disease. What should the correct conclusion be? You can't see it, but I'm smiling obnoxiously. What should the researcher have used instead? Or I'm sorry, go ahead. Maybe. What are you trying to change about the researcher's conclusion, though? There's a broader point that I'm trying to get to. What needs to be changed about it? Yes, you could say 24% of the people are expected to get the disease. So what are you doing to the researcher's conclusion? Make it fluffy. Like, you can't make a definitive statement here. You cannot make a definitive statement here. That's what you should be doing. You should be, as you did, you're trying to make it less definitive. You're trying to make it less concrete. You're trying to use that fluffy language because you cannot be definitive here. You could say something like, well, based on the simulation, 24% of the results contracted the disease or something like that. Or based on the simulation, it appears that 24% might contract the disease or something along those lines. Or you said are expected. Yeah. Based on the simulation, 24% of the people are expected to get the disease, not that they will. Not that they will. Fluffy language. That's kind of the bread and butter of an AP Stats student. You know how they grade the AP test? Has anyone ever told you? Cool. The multiple choice just runs through a machine. That's not the fun part. The fun part is the free response. There are 6 free response questions. And what they do, a bunch of people who are hired by College Board travel to St. Louis for a week. And they literally sit in like a bunch of rooms, and they're each assigned problems with that they have to read over and grade right then and there. These are the most cutthroat, evil people in the world who are sitting there criticizing every word that you choose to use in your conclusion, every word that you choose to use in your assumptions and conditions and things of that nature. They are the scum of the earth, people who will take one tiny word, and as a result of that, mark the entire problem wrong because you chose to include it or did not include it. I want to be one of those people. I want to go, because that's what they do. They hire AP stat teachers to fly out to St. Louis for a week to grade the test, and I want to do it. Anywho, let's see what else we got going on today. Now, if you do have any additional questions in regards to those problems, please, by all means, email me, or I hopefully should be available on Friday. You know why I wasn't able to do the thing on Friday, besides being sick? My principal wouldn't let me. Said, if you're going to be doing live streams on Friday with the students, you have to be in your classroom. I said, well, la-di-da. Anyway. We're going to be talking a bit more about sampling today, and we're going to be talking a bit more about the concept of bias. Bias. Ooh. After I show you this video, I'm going to talk about the 2016 election. The end of last week got really messed up for me because I was sick, so I wasn't able to respond to all of your comments on the discussion, but I do appreciate all of you guys who put out the comments and commented on each other. I love that. Thank you. But I am going to talk a little bit more about the 2016 election. Let's watch this.
Statistics are persuasive, so much so that people, organizations, and whole countries base some of their most important decisions on organized data. But there's a problem with that. Any set of statistics might have something lurking inside it, something that can turn the results completely upside down. For example, imagine you need to choose between two hospitals for an elderly relative's surgery. Out of each hospital's last 1,000 patients, 900 survived at Hospital A, while only 800 survived at Hospital B. So it looks like Hospital A is the better choice. But before you make your decision, remember that not all patients arrive at the hospital with the same level of health. And if we divide each hospital's last 1,000 patients into those who arrived in good health and those who arrived in poor health, the picture starts to look very different. Hospital A had only 100 patients who arrived in poor health, of which 30 survived. But Hospital B had 400, and they were able to save 210. So Hospital B is the better choice for patients who arrive at hospital in poor health, with a survival rate of 52.5%. And what if your relative's health is good when she arrives at the hospital? Strangely enough, Hospital B is still the better choice, with a survival rate of over 98%. So how can Hospital A have a better overall survival rate if Hospital B has better survival rates for patients in each of the two groups? What we've stumbled upon is a case of Simpson's paradox, where the same set of data can appear to show opposite trends depending on how it's grouped. This often occurs when aggregated data hides a conditional variable, sometimes known as a lurking variable, which is a hidden additional factor that significantly influences results. Here, the hidden factor is the relative proportion of patients who arrive in good or poor health. Simpson's paradox isn't just a hypothetical scenario. It pops up from time to time in the real world, sometimes in important contexts. One study in the UK appeared to show that smokers had a higher survival rate than non-smokers over a 20-year time period. That is, until dividing the participants by age group showed that the non-smokers were significantly older on average, and thus more likely to die during the trial period, precisely because they were living longer in general. Here, the age groups are the lurking variable and are vital to correctly interpret the data. In another example, an analysis of Florida's death penalty cases seemed to reveal no racial disparity in sentencing between Black and white defendants convicted of murder. But dividing the cases by the race of the victim told a different story. In either situation, Black defendants were more likely to be sentenced to death. The slightly higher overall sentencing rate for white defendants was due to the fact that cases with white victims were more likely to elicit a death sentence than cases where the victim was Black, and most murders occurred between people of the same race. So how do we avoid falling for the paradox? Unfortunately, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. Data can be grouped and divided in any number of ways. and overall numbers may sometimes give a more accurate picture than data divided into misleading or arbitrary categories. All we can do is carefully study the actual situations the statistics describe and consider whether lurking variables may be present. Otherwise, we leave ourselves vulnerable to those who would use data to manipulate others and promote their own agendas.
Use data to manipulate others and promote their own agenda. As a statistician, your job, or the hope of your job, would be to be unbiased, to not bring in preconceived notions and be able to look at the data without anything influencing how you are going to present it or conclude things. But unfortunately, it happens all the time. If you work for a major company, they hire statisticians to basically get the answers that they want. They make big money, which you can do, but you do have to suspend some of your morals in order to do such a thing. It happens everywhere. People misinterpret things all the time. For example, I'll give you a brief example. There is a story about a village in Europe in the 1700s in which people looked around the town and they saw, wow, there seem to be a lot more storks making their nests in this town. That seems pretty crazy. It was such a marked difference that they saw like such an increase in the number of storks making their nests in the town. Lo and behold, what happened less than a year later? There was a huge influx of babies. Okay, well, here's the data. Increased number of storks, increased number of babies. What conclusion should you come to? No, don't say it. Storks bring babies. Clearly, that's not true. But there was a correlation. People use this all the time. There's a correlation between these two things. Clearly, one, the other. No. Correlation, you're going to find out in the long run, correlation does not mean causation. It's a manipulation of the data. If you do look at a correlation and be like, look, here's the data that shows the correlation. Okay, that's great, but correlations don't mean causation. Storks don't bring babies. What ended up happening, the reason why there were a lot of storks and a lot of babies was because there was a large influx of young families, young couples, newly wedded couples moving into this town, moving into this village, and they built their homes. And when they built their homes, they built them in the brand new style, which had this very particular shape of chimney that storks like to make their nests on because it was warm. But when you have young, brand new couples moving to a village, what ultimately are they going to do? They're going to produce babies. It was just a byproduct. The fact that these young couples were coming in and building the brand new homes brought in the storks and brought in the babies. It was a lurking variable. People use that kind of stuff to manipulate people. They use data to manipulate other people. Can we all agree smoking eventually leads to cancer? Yeah, that's a fair statement. Back in the 1960s, when cigarette companies were put on trial, they were like, oh, hold on a second. You're telling us that just because there is a correlation between long-term smoking and getting lung cancer, you're trying to say that cigarettes cause cancer? You can't do that. Correlation does not equal causation. That's a fact. That actually did happen. The only way that you can prove that cigarettes cause cancer is with long-term observational studies or experiments. But it's a little unethical to force someone to smoke for 20 years. So you have to do long-term observational studies. They weren't really able to prove until the 1970s or 80s that cigarettes caused cancer, despite the fact that it was pretty darn obvious. Let's talk about the 2016 election real quick. I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of the numbers, but let's talk about 3 states. 3 states in your question from last week: Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Now, if you saw me on election night, I had a giant whiteboard. I had the map of the United States. I had all my statistics lined up. By the way, I might live stream it this year just for fun if you want to join. But I had every state correct. Every single state and DC, I had it correct except for those 3 states. Why? In Wisconsin, for example, every major pundit, every major expert was saying, Wisconsin, Clinton's going to win Wisconsin. Likely, leaning, everything, it's a sure deal. She's going to win Wisconsin. All of the polling, Clinton up by 8, Clinton up by 7, Clinton up by 10, Clinton up by 5 in Wisconsin. The polling, the sampling. But she lost. She lost by less than 1%. Now, people have their reasons. I don't like opinions. I don't like opinions. I don't like people's like, well, I think this is what happened. No, I know what happened. I know exactly what happened. When you do a poll, you are trying to eliminate as much bias as possible. But here's what happened. You go out and you poll people, and you're like, okay, I need to get 1,000 responses, about 1,000 responses. All right, so I'm going to ask like 1,500 people. All right, I ask 1,500 people. What's going to happen more often than not when you ask someone to participate in a poll? They're probably going to say no by a much different number than what I'm about to show you, which I'll show you the thing in a minute. I'm making these numbers up to kind of prove a point. 1,500 people they asked. Only 1,000, let's pretend, only 1,000 said, yes, I will participate in your poll. And out of that 1,000, 600 said that they were going to vote for Clinton, and 400 said that they were going to vote for Trump. So, as a statistician, as a pollster, as someone whose job it is to do this, I'm not going to make anything up. I can't make anything up. My integrity and my job is at stake. I can only report the information that I get. That's all that I can do. So I write up a whole conclusion. Clinton is winning 60% to 40% in Wisconsin. So everybody runs with it. The news runs with it. Newspapers run with it. Websites run with it. She's up by 20 points in Wisconsin. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. But what about those 500 people who said, no, I don't want to participate in your survey? The 500 people who said, no, I don't want to participate in your survey. As a statistician, my assumption and my hope is that those 500 people would be of a similar percentage to this. Because as long as they are a similar percentage to the numbers that I got, then my numbers are accurate, or somewhat accurate to an extent. Again, fluffy language. But what ended up happening is those 500 people who said, no, thank you, I don't want to participate. Well, 400 of them voted for Trump, and 100 of them voted for Clinton. You can't read this marker is terrible. And as a result, on the day when people actually went out to vote, the numbers flipped, not because of any nefarious means, not because of any Facebook Russian ads, not because people were disenfranchised, not because people were like, oh, we're angry and we want to vote, blah, 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 blah. No. It was because of something called non-response bias. Non-response bias. I'm going to write this into our notes later. You can't do anything about non-response bias. The 500 people who said no thank you, maybe they're people that just didn't want to participate, or maybe they didn't trust the polls. I'm not going to trust you with my opinion. Why would I trust you with my opinion? I don't want to do that. Look how messed up this is. I'm going to show you something on the computer. Actually, I should bring it over with me. In that discussion that I had on Google Classroom with you, I asked, are there better ways of collecting this data? Are there better ways? And some of you had some interesting ideas. Some of them good, some of them a little bit, meh. But here is, you can't see it. Here is a report on state polling on the presidential election for this year. State polling for this year for the presidential election. in the state of North Carolina. And the thing that I want to bring your attention to more than anything is this. What does that mean? What does that mean? Response rate 2%? If I went out and surveyed 1,000 people, 1,000, how many people responded? Come on, AP students. If I surveyed 1,000 people, how many, if only 2% responded, how many actually agreed to take my survey? 20. Yeah. See, the thing is, people don't want to participate in polls. People don't want to participate in surveys, which is fine. That's their right. They don't have to. But when you see a poll on TV, it doesn't matter what website it is. It doesn't matter what TV channel it is. You need to take it with a grain of salt. Because when they go out and ask 1,000 people, that's not the opinion of 1,000 people. That's the opinion of just the 20 who said, yes, I'll take your survey. Now, in reality, yes, they did get 1,046 respondents. They did get 1,046 respondents. But they had to ask tens of thousands of people. Tens of thousands of people just to get that number. 2%. People don't want to answer their phones. People don't want to respond to emails. People don't want to be stopped on the street and interrupted to give their opinion. The people who typically do give their opinion, and you're going to find this out way more often than not, the people who give their opinion are the ones who feel strongest about it. The people who have the strongest feelings about whatever side of the political spectrum that they're on, they're the ones that respond. They do not represent the vast majority. They only represent about 2%. Statistics is fun. Let me give you a silly example before I get to our notes. Let me give you a silly example. Let's say, did I talk about like a town-wide fitness test yet? Cool, you would have remembered. Let's say that Barnegat decides, hey, we want to find out how physically fit our town is. So in order to do that, they sponsor this physical challenge where they set up all of these like an obstacle course or some kind of like thing where they invite, hey, citizens of Barnegat Township, come on out on this day and we'll do a physical fitness test because we want to see how fit our town is. Do you really think I'm going to show up? Who's going to show up? Yeah, people who want to show off, people who already run like 10 miles a day, people who already play linebacker for the football team, I don't know. People who are going to show up are already physically fit. That doesn't accurately represent the physical fitness of Barnegat Township. That just accurately represents people who are already physically fit. This doesn't represent people in North Carolina. This represents the extremes of North Carolina. Blah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if you do not already have them out, I'm going to need those notebooks out and open. Let's see what we got here. Oh, get out of that. Zoom back out. There we go. Today is the 23rd. This is technically Chapter 11 samples continued. This is some continuation of the notes that I wanted to finish. Now, the notes that I'm going to give you, you should have already read about it in your textbook. You should have already read about it. But of course, if you didn't read it deeply enough and didn't put it underneath your pillow, how are you going to absorb the information? Hopefully, you are enjoying the snark that is the authors of this textbook. They are my heroes. Let's talk about a multi-stage survey. A multi-stage survey. There we go. A multi-stage survey is a survey that has multiple steps and possibly different types of sampling. Last week, we talked about simple random sample. We talked about cluster sampling. We talked about stratified sampling. We talked about systematic sampling. A multi-stage survey might include different types of sampling along the way, where you might systematically select every 10th person, walking out of Taco Bell or whatever. And then after that, then you might do a simple random sample of those people in order to proceed to the next step of that survey. Anything that involves multiple steps is considered a multi-stage survey. There's no one-size-fit-all option for that particular thing. Again, what's interesting is that, let me ask you a question. Clearly, if somebody came up to you and said, hey, will you take a survey? My first reaction is, how long will it take? If it's going to take like 10 minutes, I'm out of here. If it's going to take like 15 seconds, maybe. It depends on how I feel. If you're doing a multi-stage survey, it's like you need to borrow like a half an hour of somebody's time just to get it done. Man, you're not going to get many results. It's pretty crazy. See, the benefit that we had that we don't have this year, the benefit that we have is that I would send you guys out typically to go collect data from different classrooms where you would randomly select students within that classroom. Some of you may remember last year getting interrupted by my students and then teachers getting mad at me. Yeah. But what's beauty about that is if somebody comes to your door and they're like, hey, I need to randomly select like 5 kids to take a survey, aren't you like, heck yeah, let me do that? Yeah, because you're in school. But if you're like in Wawa, screw that. So I'm going to get my coffee and leave. It depends on where you are and what you're doing. What time of day do most people call for a survey? What type of day, time of day do most people call you or call your parents to get a survey? Say again? Close. Dinner time. They call it dinner time because you're more likely to be home. Although it sucks because you're like, oh, they always call it dinner time. I assume that's what people sound like. Let's talk about a sampling frame. Sampling frame is a list. If I can get this word right. There we go. The list from which the sample is drawn. The list from which the sample is drawn. Oh, that's a hair. That's weird. The list is the population of interest. I'm going to abbreviate the word population. So, for example, if I wanted to select a bunch of Barnegat High School students, perhaps I would get an alphabetical listing of everybody by their last name, and now that's my frame from which I'm drawing from. Whereas, if I went around today, for example, and tried to randomly select students out of classrooms, I would unfortunately be met with a huge inconvenience. My sampling frame are just students who showed up today. What is this, cohort 1? Yeah, just cohort 1. And whoever showed up from cohort 1. All of a sudden, my sampling frame is much smaller. I would probably be better off. I would be much better off getting an alphabetical listing from the office. Let's see. Now this section I'm going to title bias. Bias is typically, no, I shouldn't say typically. It's a bad thing. Bias is a bad thing. I tell all my students when it comes to statistics, leave your opinions at the door. Leave your opinions at the door. Leave your preconceived notions at the door. When you are dealing with statistics, you are dealing with the numbers. You are trying to deal with them in an unbiased fashion as possible. It is not 100% possible to eliminate all of your own bias. It's not really that possible. It's also not 100% possible to eliminate bias from a sample. Sometimes there's some bias that you can't account for. But regardless, let's talk about something called sampling error, or another word, variability. Sampling error. If I flip a coin 100 times, how many tails should I get? 50. I should. If I flip a coin 100 times, I should get 50-50, 50 tails. So I set out and I flip a coin 50 times. I'm sorry, 100 times. What am I talking about? 100 times. I get 51-49. Okay, hold on. I get 51-49. I do it again, I get 48-52. I do it again, I get 55-45. I do it again, and maybe I got 50-50. Good for me. I just did 4 trials. Are any of them wrong? No, none of them are wrong. You might have evidence to believe that if I got like a 70-30, you might have evidence to believe that something's wrong. But you can't prove that there's something wrong yet. I'll erase that 70-30 though. I don't like it. Makes me sad. This is variability. This is natural variability within the sample. I could go out and I could poll 1,000 Americans on their opinion about the election. And I may get like a certain number. I don't know, like 51-48. But then I go out the next day and I get 48-52. I go out the next day and I get 55-45. That's just natural variation. Where's the true number? I don't know. Well, for the coin, the true number is 50-50. For the election, nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what the true number is for the election. All that we know is a good idea as to where it is. A good idea. That's the fluffy language. That good idea, unfortunately. Statistics is a science, and it is an inexact science. Inexact. Sampling error is the difference between a population parameter and a sample statistic. This marker is dying on me. Makes me sad. That would have been sweet. All right, ready? I'm going to try it again with this box. You ready? You ready? Nailed it. It's also known as a natural variation between parameter and statistic. A parameter is when you have everyone within that population, you know exactly what the opinion is or the number is from the population. A statistic is based on a sample, which is only a portion of that population. I know that the coin's got to be 50-50. That's the population parameter. But if I conduct a sample of 100 flips, I might get 50-50, but I also might get 51-49. I might also get 40-60. That happens from time to time. That is just natural variation. When you hear the word sampling error, you need to know that that is not a mistake. A sampling error is not a mistake. It is just a natural variation. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can really do about natural variations. The next thing we can do something about, Voluntary response bias. I can spell voluntary today. There we go. Voluntary response bias. Individuals are invited to respond. Those who do are counted. So, I'm creating, I did the physical fitness thing. I'll do something else. Like I'm creating a brand new type of, hamburger or something like that. And it's going to taste delicious. So I invite people, hey, come on out and taste this hamburger. Pretty much the only people who are going to come out and taste this hamburger are people who already like hamburgers. People who hate hamburgers. Maybe I do want their opinion because maybe I can sway them to like this type of hamburger. Maybe there are people who just don't want to eat meat. That's fine, but they're not going to come out and taste this hamburger. I'm only going to get the opinion of people who actually respond. If you send out an email asking 1 million people their opinion on something, you're only going to get the responses of those who felt strong enough to respond. That's voluntary response bias. It's a tricky, tricky trap to fall into. Let's see. Ooh, there's a fun one. I decide that I want to poll people or Americans on their opinion on something, whatever that may be, some kind of weird thing. So I decide to poll all the teachers in my hallway. It sounds too easy. Because it is. It's called convenience bias. Those in the sample are convenient for us to sample. All right, I have like a poll that I want to take. I'm going to poll everybody, on my bus. I'm going to poll everybody on my sports team. No. You can't just poll everybody on your sports team. Oh, it's a random selection. People randomly. No. It's the bus. Random people. No. If it's convenient for you, that's a bias. Let's talk about undercoverage. Some portion of the population, I'm going to abbreviate population again, is not sampled at all or has smaller representation. Mr. Markey, I went out to the mall in Toms River at 9 a.m. and I sampled people in the mall. I randomly selected them. I did everything that I was supposed to do. Cool. Who actually is at the mall at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday? Or old people. You ever been in the mall? You ever see they have like mile markers on the floor? They do. They legitimately do. You just don't see them. They have mile markers on the floor because old people go to the mall and do laps. True story. You go to the mall at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. Oh my gosh, you are really uncovering a lot of people. Mainly people with jobs, Fine. I'm going to call people. Maybe I'll call, randomly like their cell phone, but I'll call them at like, I don't want to do dinner time. Let's do like 11 o'clock in the morning. Cool. 11 o'clock in the morning. Okay. A lot of people aren't going to answer their phones. The people who would answer their phones are the people who probably have some availability. People who either don't have jobs or, stay-at-home parents or something along those lines. You can get rid of undercoverage based on how you decide to collect your sample. But you have to be careful. There are a lot of examples that we can identify. Yes, that's undercoverage bias. Okay, how do we get rid of it? Now that's a different conversation. The point of this is being able to identify the type of bias. I've talked briefly about non-response bias. Those who don't respond have differing answers to those who do. Those who respond have differing answers from those who do. That is exactly what happened in Wisconsin. That happened in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. You know what they've nicknamed that part of the country? Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin? No. The Midwest is like Kansas, Iowa, stuff like that, you know. I mean, Illinois, whatever, you know. It's called the Rust Belt. The Rust Belt. Because there's a lot of manufacturing jobs, a lot of steel jobs, car manufacturing jobs, things of that nature. But it's been called the Rust Belt because for years, well, what ends up happening with metal when you neglect it over the years? It rusts. Anyway. Now, non-response bias is much different when compared to response bias. Response bias is not the opposite. Response bias is not the opposite. Question. I'm going to ask a survey question, and you just kind of think about how you would respond. How would you feel if the Parkway speed limit was upped to 75 miles an hour? And that would be the question. And you're like, okay, let me think about that question for a little bit. How would I feel if the Parkway speed limit was up to 75 miles an hour? Cool. All right. I come back to you another time, or maybe I go to a different person and I ask them the following question. Hey, how would you feel if the Parkway speed limit was up to 75 miles an hour and people were dying? And you were like, oh no, I don't want that to happen. No, I don't feel good about that because I added that little bit of stuff. That's response bias. Anything in survey design, I'm sorry, I just said that together. Anything in survey design that influences the responses. Anything in the survey design that influences the responses. If that is the case, that is response bias. You cannot do that. If you are doing that, then whether consciously or subconsciously, you are pushing people's responses in a certain direction. No, but Mr. Markey, I just wanted to inform them that if we up the speed limit on the Parkway, there's a chance that people could die. Yes, I understand that, but they need to make that decision, not you. Because if you make that decision for them, then more often than not, you're pushing their responses in a certain direction. There are some people who might not even care that people will die on the Parkway. I don't know. Some of you are like, less people. It's one of those weird things where people laugh, but they laugh out their nose, but just by blowing air out their nose. It's like, it's weird. It's such a weird laugh. Anyway. Now, that is the bulk of Chapter 11. The bulk of Chapter 11 was talking about sample surveys and biases. Biases. Biasi? Nah, weird. I do have that quizzes for you. It is available till Tuesday. I also may or may not assign one other thing. I haven't decided yet. I'm gonna leave that on the back burner for now. But that quizzes is available until Tuesday. Make sure you get that done. You have 2 chances of getting it done. Please get it done. I will also post that Math League video for you to watch for fun. Whatever. I don't care. That's up to you. Get 1 million views on it. Something like that. Trying to think if there was anything else. I had a major point to make, but it had, I don't know. At this point, I'm going to sign off on the live stream because we got about a minute to the bell. And we're going to do that. Click. Click. Boom.